Hey friends, I hope you're doing well. This week we are working on the fact that we're told all the time that we need to hook the reader in the first chapter, the first page, the first line. What does that even mean? How do we make that happen? To those who don't know me, I'm E. Prabilski, and this is Authority, where I spill the tea on the publishing industry. I've been an editor for 17 years. I'm on the board of directors for the Editorial Freelancers Association. I'm the head of the New England chapter, also for the EFA, and I'm the Northeastern Regional Head for Author Nation. So, yeah, I've been doing this for a hot minute, and I know some stuff. Something I've been seeing over and over again as an editor is something that happens, and people come to me for this all the time, is stories that just don't grab a reader in the first pages, the first line. People just don't read past that. And usually what happens is these stories start in the wrong place, or they think they need to do a bunch of exposition and setting information before they get to the action, and this usually drives people off. The exposition isn't always the problem, though. The problem is they don't have a hook. So, what's a hook? We hear that term all the time. What is it? Before we go too far in this, let's take it. Let's define this. And it sounds pretty much like what it is. It's kind of like a fishhook. It's the thing that grabs people and drags their attention into whatever it is. They're a common marketing term, and it's basically the thing that generates curiosity. It's what makes people want to understand more of this. When you see it in marketing in the wild, it's usually things like a headline on an email or maybe a picture on a marketing ad says, "Why isn't your book selling?" It asks you a question, so on, things like that. They grab their attention of the target audience and drives them to interact further with the thing, whether it's a product, a video, whatever it is. It's the thing designed to grab your attention and make you want to interact with this. These principles are translated into books. The hook is the thing that makes your reader want to continue reading your book. There's an example of a nearly perfect hook, if not perfect, that I use all the time, and it is from Blood Rights. It's the sixth book in the Dresden Files by Jim Butcher. The building was on fire, and it wasn't my fault. Even if you don't know who Harry Dresden is and why the fact that that's really funny because he sets everything on fire, everything's always on fire, and it's usually his fault. Even if you don't know that fact, there's a series of questions that go into your head like, why would I assume it's your fault? Why is the building on fire? That's the kind of thing we want to look at building into our writing. A hook doesn't have to be action, though. It can be something that just makes the reader curious. That's it. Another example of a really good hook that inspires curiosity comes from The Hobbit, from J.R.R. Tolkien. Wow, I can talk today. In a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit. Not a nasty, dirty, wet hole filled with the ends of worms and an oozy smell, nor yet a dry, bare, sandy hole with nothing in it to sit down on or eat. It was a hobbit hole, and that means comfort. Yes, I'm aware I missed a few words, please forgive me. There is no action in this, though. I got enough of the concept. There's no action here, right? There's nothing immediately happening, unlike the building was on fire and it wasn't my fault. There's no sense of urgency here, and yet you have questions. What's a hobbit? If a hobbit hole isn't that thing, what is a hobbit hole? What is this comfort you're describing? Is it comfort for a person? Is it comfort for an animal? What is this? And it feels kind of cozy. Another example from another person, The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath, right? The opening line to that is, "It was a queer, sultry summer, the summer they electrocuted the Rosenbergs, and I didn't know what I was doing in New York." Again, you have all these questions. Who are the Rosenbergs? Why are they executed? Why is this person in New York? Why don't they know why they're in New York? Those are examples of hooks. And as I've been saying, it has a singular goal, to make you curious about what comes after it. So aren't hooks just like marketing stuff? Yes and no. In this case, you're not really trying to sell anything specific that you could argue you're trying to sell the page turn, I guess. They're traditionally a marketing technique, you'll hear them talked about there, but in this case, it's just a thing to encourage people to continue being interested. You're playing with their heartstrings, which is a large percentage of what we do as authors, right? That's kind of our job. One of the things we are looking for as these writers, we're striving to hit people in the emotions. This is kind of a more specific, winnowed down, tight version of that keeps people interested in the story or gets them invested in the first place. You aren't trying to necessarily sell them the book. If they're reading it, they probably have at least looked at it. That said, You might be trying to get somebody who's picked up your book off the shelf and is looking at the first page and is like, do I want to read this? Is this something I want? Or they might be using the Look Inside feature on Amazon. Whatever it is, that is what you're not necessarily trying to get somebody who's already bought the book, but it does already get someone who's already bought the book to get them invested reading. Everyone talks about how the back blurb sells books, and it does. But if you don't have an adequate hook in the first page, if your first page doesn't grab a reader, if your first line doesn't grab a reader, they might not look further, and no blurb in the world will sell it if they use the Look Inside, and it's just they're not there for it. Which kind of brings me into my next thought here. Where to use hooks, right? Now, this is just my personal opinion. It's not gospel, but I personally believe that hooks are something you use more than just in the opening line or the opening paragraph or page. I actually believe in using them multiple places throughout the book. So you obviously want one in your opening line and your opening paragraph and multiple places on that page. You're kind of doing things to grab people's attention. I also recommend you put one at the end of each chapter. Every single one. Every chapter should end with something that makes the reader go, okay, but what happens next? That means that it will make them want to keep turning those pages. There are obviously places where you're going to have people keep reading because they're invested in the story, right? That is a thing. But if you add a hook at the end of each chapter, raise that curiosity, keep them pushing forward. The end of each chapter, you're going to have a book that is going to be described as unputdownable, which is usually the word that I hear about my books the most. And I do that on purpose, because it keeps people staying up all night because they're like, okay, but what happens next? And they can't put the book down. That is my entire goal, is to prevent them from putting the book down. I know it's sadistic because you need to eat and read and read other things, and you need to go to work and so on. But I know I'm mean, I'm awful. But my whole goal is to make you not want to put that book down and want to pick it up again as soon as you're ready to. And I'm sure you as authors, that is also your goal. But remember that these hooks don't have to be action. They can be anything that pulls on a person's emotions. It could be a couple kissing for the first time, like their lips meet and then the chapter ends. And people are like, well, what happens next? Like, how do they react to this? Oh my God, I've been waiting for this. They turn the page. It can be all kinds of things. It doesn't need to be a big bang. It doesn't need to be high tension. It just needs to be something that makes them go, but what happens next? It could be somebody like sitting in a bar and spotting somebody they know across the bar. I'm like, okay, but why is Arlene wearing that hat? And why is Arlene wearing that hat? I want to know. Turn the page. It can be all kinds of things. It doesn't have to be just like the world is ending and they turn the page to discover how the world is ending. It could obviously include action. I mean, if a character's getting shot at, you could end the chapter with, somebody raises the gun and pulls the trigger and you don't know what happens next. That is a thing you can do. And yes, absolutely use those. It's great. However, it can also be less high stakes things. And that, again, keeps readers barreling forward. They're going to want to know what happens next. And you're asking that question at the end of every single chapter, which will make them want to know what happens next. You don't need to do a chapter break, of course, after every single moment of tension, right? That would be ridiculous, because then you'd have a bunch of very short chapters. And I don't recommend it. But wherever you do add those chapter breaks, add that hook. And then keep them wanting to turn the page. And that is your whole goal here. Now, people are going to say, okay, cliffhangers, though. Cliffhangers are hooks, right? Don't they get you wanting to read the next book? And yeah, people will definitely say, cliffhangers are great. They're hooks. And no, I hate them. I hate cliffhangers. I loathe them. And they have a purpose, but it's usually not how they're used. And this is obviously commonly a problem. And cliffhangers are kind of universally hated for a lot of reasons. Before I complain about them too much, I do want to point out where they are useful and appropriate, because that is much shorter than why I hate them, okay? The only time I think cliffhangers work are in things like TV episodes where you're waiting a week and you know the next episode is coming out. Or maybe the end of a TV season and you know the next season is coming out. But even then, these days, that's a lot dicier, because we live in a world where Netflix will cancel a show after a season cliffhanger and never resolve it. You'll never know what happened, ever. It happens all the time. It didn't happen as much when I was a kid. Back in the day when we climbed uphill both ways to school in the snow. Yeah, I'm old. It's fine. It's fine. That didn't happen as much back then. These days it happens. Seems like every show practically gets canceled kind of at random and then maybe gets picked up by another network, and even then the cliffhangers are not great. Another a place that I think cliffhangers work is if you are doing a rapid release series. So say you have a trilogy you're releasing all at once or in like one a month, right? They're already written, they're already edited, you have them prepared, you've got this set up, and then boom, boom, boom. You can keep them on tenterhooks for a while, but the next book is already out there. They can just go get it. They don't have to wait forever. And yes, okay. But successful authors do this all the time. Yeah, there are people who definitely do that all the time. And you know why they can get away with it? Because they're successful authors. People already know that that cliffhanger is not going to be a permanent situation. They're going to get the next installment in that series, hopefully pretty soon, or within a reasonable margin of time, right? They're not going to be sitting in that anxiety forever. And it's not going to be a thing that lasts very long. But until you're that person, or unless you're releasing a trilogy all at once or something, don't do it. Because getting readers to trust you enough to trust you, that cliffhanger isn't going to be just forever. They're never going to know what happens next because all kinds of things might happen. Don't employ it. Like, I would avoid that. It's not a good look. So while a cliffhanger is a really solid way to get people to want to buy the next book, getting people to trust you enough to let that cliffhanger go is a lot harder than it used to be in a lot of ways. And I think a lot of that is driven by the Netflix cancellation and all like policies and the way that Fox cancels TV shows like Firefly. Just Firefly. Or the AO. Oh my god. Oh, sorry, OA. The OA, the original Angel, like that show. Canceled on a cliffhanger. Nothing. I was so mad. And that happens a lot. So getting people to trust you is even harder these days. So cliffhangers, maybe don't. Okay, we've now identified what a hook is. We've kind of gone over what it is. How do you write one? Like, what is the method, right? Your first task when you're looking at creating a hook is to identify what you want the reader to be feeling in that moment. What emotion are you trying to invoke in them? And that can be a function of the genre as well as the scene you're using to open the story. Comparing Dresden Files to The Hobbit, right? You can see very different emotional tones in those two openings. Dresden has a lot of pressure, and like if there's a building that's on fire, that's obviously one of those things. It's definitely a bad thing, and it's definitely a now bad thing, and it's somebody's fault. That's an emergency right now. And at that point in the series, Dresden Files was more of a collection of investigative gumshoe urban fantasy type stuff. That's kind of changed in later books. It's definitely developed a different tone. But they're, at least at that point, they were urban fantasy thrillers, which is the same genre that I write in. They're quick-paced, high-tension stories designed to, like, keep you on the edge of your seat. That's what a thriller does. Contrasting that to The Hobbit, it opens with coziness. It feels like you're settling into an armchair with a cup of tea, waiting to be swept away into a world of magic. Both of them get the job done in making you ask questions. They're really good at that. But they set the tone for the rest of the book in a different way. The Hobbit invites you to ask questions about the world the story takes place in, what a hobbit is, what kind of comforts they live in. It's gentle, it's sweet. And that, yeah, while the book has some exciting moments, it's Tolkien wrote it as a bedtime story for his children, and it feels like that. So seeing that, consider the emotional tone you're setting with that scene and what you're looking to set for your book. Your hook is not necessarily your first line. Like, if The Hobbit, I read the first, like, couple sentences. That opening there, that whole thing together was the hook. Like, because the very first line, yes, it invites questions, but the whole paragraph there really draws you in further. It can be your first paragraph, though your first line needs to be good. It can also be a couple of other things through the page. Your first line's job is to make them want to read past the first line, but your hook can be later on down the page, in that paragraph, whatever, but you want to set it early and fast. This is really important in books being pitched to traditional publishers, because they are going to want to make sure that you know how to grab an audience and hold on to them. And if you don't have a good hook, if you don't have a way to, like, grab the audience by the throat and be like, this is what I'm delivering you, they're going to pass. You don't have a lot of time to get the reader asking questions and wanting to read more. Previous generations, older books, the trend was a much slower opening. You didn't have to get to the adventure very quickly. You could just kind of ramble around a little bit. But even then, even Tolkien, he invited you to ask questions very early on. While you don't necessarily go into it, a screaming car wreck, you're still asking questions. It's inviting you in. So once you know that tone that you're setting, right? You need to know what question you want the reader to ask. You need to identify what question it is. Offer them space to pose that question. That's the hook. You're writing something that guides them to a very specific set of questions, or a very specific question you want them to answer. I refer you back to the questions. The Dresden File quote says, "Why is the building on fire? Are you in the building? Why would I think it's your fault?" Those are a very specific set of questions that opening is designed specifically to make you ask. And that's pretty much the whole process. You identify the emotional tone, and then figure out what question or questions you want them to ask, and set them up to ask that question. I know it sounds really generic, but it isn't. It's far more specific than, I just want them to read more. It's, you need to know the tone and the question. And identifying the questions you want the reader to ask will help you shape your words in ways that make them ask the exact question you're inviting them to. And you draw them through by asking readers a series of questions, and making readers ask you those questions. And that is how you keep them flowing through a book. Now, this skill, it translates, right? Now that you understand this concept of a hook and how to kind of put it together, you can apply it to your first lines, your chapter endings, and a whole lot more than that. Understanding how hooks work it lets you create them in ways that impact your ability to write a book blurb, all of your author marketing things, email headings. It can help you open up a whole world where you are putting people in a position to ask questions. And they want those questions answered, because humans by nature are curious creatures. We just are. So if you invite people to ask questions, then they're going to start interacting with you. And that could be on your social media platform, etc., etc., etc. There's endless, limitless things that this involves. So once you've got that done, you also have an understanding of a lot of marketing. It's in the hook. You can apply this to so many different things. In fact, this is one of the big secret ingredients, so to speak, in major air quotes, to success, right? It's in air quotes because it isn't really a secret, but it is one of the keystones to being successful, is being able to ask these questions and getting people to ask these questions. So spend some time chewing over this idea, right? And you can do this by practicing writing hooks for things that already exist. You can use it to practice writing hooks for stories like Star Wars. You could grab Star Wars and write a new hook for it. And you can also do things like look at various different types of media out there, look at all kinds of different things, and look at what other people are doing to hook your attention. And once you see it, you're never going to unsee it. You can look at TV shows, movies, marketing ads, book blurbs, doesn't matter what, and look for the thing. What is the thing that they are using to make you ask questions? And what questions are they trying to make you ask? And how are you supposed to be feeling about this? Assess all of that. And once you have this skill, it's going to radically transform your ability to command reader attention, no matter what arena you're in. At least in that way. If you the second part of this, and that's future episodes, but if you can't follow the hook with content that matches what you have set up in the hook, you are immediately going to fall down. So the hook in and of itself is not the only thing that you need to be successful, not even close. However, if you set a good hook and then follow up with solid responses, it is going to give you so much more mileage than not. Thank you so much for spending time with me this week. If you need an editor or coaching services, if you want somebody to help you look at your first page, help you identify your hooks, help you create a hook, contact me. The contact information's on my website, selfpub.me, and you don't have to do this alone. There are people out here who know their business, who will help you with this. So if it feels like it's too much, shoot me an email. Maybe I can give you a hand. All right? Take care, friends. I hope you have a safe week. Things are stressful out there. I'll talk to you soon.